The first iron nail entered the door of Northgate Foundling House while 26 children were still eating breakfast inside. Ottilie Marr heard the hammer from the kitchen. Every spoon stopped. The youngest child lowered a piece of oat bread. Near the hearth, two sisters reached for each other beneath the table. Ottilie set down the milk pitcher. Finish eating. Another blow shook flour from the beams. A royal closure ribbon stretched across the front windows. Through the frost-clouded glass, Ottilie saw pack matron Vesna Crowell, beside 3 court clerks, 6 armed wolves, and the enormous Howl Census Drum. The drum had not been brought to a house closure in living memory. Its moon-gray hide covered black oak carved with the first pack names. Each winter it counted recognized children, ration claims, guardianship duties, and every life the pack had sworn not to abandon before the snow roads closed. Today it stood in Ottilie's yard like a witness ordered to forget. "Stay with Mara," Ottilie told the oldest girl. Then she crossed the crowded hall, past drying boots, mended coats, and 26 beds in rooms built for 6. She opened the door before the guard could drive in the third nail. Vesna did not flinch. "You were ordered to present the house empty. I was ordered to present the children after morning meal. The wagons are waiting." 3 barred wagons stood near the gate. "No, this is not a negotiation. Those are prisoner wagons, secured transport for unregistered dependents. They have names, not names recognized by the pack. You remove the recognition." Vesna opened the orphan roll. Northgate shelters, children absent from birth rolls, death ledgers, and lawful guardianship claims. Several may be illegitimate offspring of ranked alphas. Their presence compromises inheritance purity. Ottilie looked at the drum. "Then let it count them." "The drum answers only to lawful entries." "Does it?" A mounted guard shifted aside. Alpha King Hadric Roven had arrived without heralds. Winter wind moved through his dark hair. War and command had cut harder lines into the face Ottilie once knew better than her own. His left hand closed around the closure order. It still did that when pain entered him. He dismounted and stopped before the door. "Ottilie Hadric." Vesna's eyes sharpened at the absence of title. He unfolded the order. "Northgate Foundling House is closed pending investigation into falsified guardianship claims and concealed blood inheritance." "Who reported falsification?" "The pack registry." "Vesna's office." The Crown reviewed the evidence. "Did you review the children?" "I reviewed the rolls." "He reviewed the rolls, not the room," Ottilie said. Vesna stepped forward. Her grief has made her incapable of separating care from possession. She lost 1 child in the war, and has spent 12 years filling this house with replacements. One of the younger children began to cry. Hadric's left hand closed harder. Once he would have reached for Ottilie. Now he held the paper that would remove every child beneath her roof. "They are not replacements," Ottilie said. "They are other women's children whom you refuse to release. They are children the court stopped feeding after it erased their mothers' names." Hadric looked toward the house. "Do you possess lawful records for all 26? "I possess the names they arrived with, the villages they remember, the songs their parents used, and the burial marks of those we found. That is not legal proof. It was enough proof when the pack collected their fathers for war." A soldier near the drum lowered his eyes. Hadric opened the order fully. "I cannot preserve inheritance law through private memory. Private memory kept them alive because public law found them expensive." Vesna nodded to the guard captain. "Seal the door." Ottilie stepped onto the threshold. "You will not nail children inside. They are being removed first. To separate ward houses until no one can prove which child came from which stolen land?" Vesna's face went still. Hadric noticed. Not enough to stop. He pressed his signet into the closure wax. Hadric had not nailed the door with his own hand. He had done worse. He had made the nail lawful. By Crown authority, Northgate Foundling House is suspended. Behind Ottilie, the youngest child whispered, "Will they take our names?" "No." Her answer carried into the yard. Vesna lifted the census mallet. "1 closing beat will remove this household from the winter ration count." She struck the Howl Census Drum. The sound rolled across Northgate like thunder beneath snow. The closure clerk dipped his pen. The drum struck again. No hand touched it. Then a 3rd beat. A 4th. Vesna stepped away. Repeated lullabies can contaminate recognition. Ottilie faced the moon-gray hide. The drum does not name the loved. It names the owed. The Howl Census Drum did not pity children. It counted winter obligation, blood acknowledged, ration promised, and protection once sworn beneath pack law. The beats continued. 5, 6, 7. With each one, silver rose from the carved rim and crossed the yard toward the sealed door. Vesna ordered the guards to cover the drum. The first wolf who approached stopped when the next beat cracked the snow beneath his boots. 14, 15, 16. Silver gathered around Hadric's closure order. Names formed in the air, carried in the cadence of lullabies Ottilie had sung through fever, winter terror, and nights when children woke calling for buried mothers. 23, 24, 25, 26. The last child inside had been counted, yet the drum struck once more. The 27th beat split Hadric's closure seal down the center. No new name appeared. Silver fire formed the old protection crest of House Roven, the mark used when royal blood accepted guardianship over war orphans no registry was permitted to abandon. Hadric stared at it. Vesna closed the roll too late. The drum was not correcting the list. It was exposing why the list had been made empty. The 27th beat had counted no child. It had counted a debt. And beneath Hadric's broken seal, a hidden page slid from Vesna's roll, marked with the dried blood oath of his dead brother. The 27th beat had not named a child. It had named the debt House Roven had taught the registry to forget. The hidden page lay across the snow between Hadric's broken seal and Vesna Crowell's boots. No one reached for it at first. The dried blood at its edge had darkened almost black, but the crest remained visible. House Roven beneath a winter roof, surrounded by 26 small oath marks. Vesna recovered before the clerks did. A wartime pledge expires with the Alpha who swore it. Ottilie stepped down from the threshold. Winter obligation does not expire while the children named beneath it are still alive. They are not named. They were. Vesna's hand tightened around the orphan roll. Prince Oren issued temporary shelter authority during the Eastern Campaign. Temporary authority cannot create permanent inheritance claims. Ottilie looked at Hadric. Open the oath ledger. The words were not a request. Hadric's gaze remained on his brother's blood. The ledger is held in the winter registry. Then bring it here. Vesna said. Majesty, Northgate is under closure. No household may challenge the registry before transfer is complete. Ottilie turned toward the barred wagons. Transfer first. Review later. Separate the children before anyone can compare their names. Is that the procedure? It is the lawful protection of disputed dependents. You called them unregistered because registered children must be fed. Hadric looked at Vesna. Bring the winter obligation ledger. A clerk ran toward the registry hall. The Howl Census Drum had fallen silent. Its work was finished. Now paper had to answer for what paper erased. Vesna folded the hidden page without permission. Hadric held out his hand. She gave it to him. He read the blood oath once in silence, then aloud. House Roven accepts winter guardianship over the war. Orphans delivered through Northgate. Food, shelter, name review, and family land protection shall continue until each child is restored to lawful kin or granted independent pack standing. The children were listed not as charity, but obligation. Vesna said. The review term was 3 years. Ottilie Marr unlawfully extended residence beyond it. Ottilie faced her. Where are the review judgments? The registry found insufficient proof. For all 26? For many over 12 years. Then where are the hearing dates? Vesna's expression did not change. Formal hearings require a surviving parent, acknowledged sire, or village witness. War displacement made those thresholds impossible in most cases, so the hearings were never held. They could not lawfully proceed. And because they never proceeded, the children remained unverified. Because they remained unverified, ration duty ended. Because ration duty ended, Northgate carried the cost alone. Private continuation does not transform expired shelter into lawful guardianship. Ottilie stepped closer. No. It proves the oath was abandoned before the children were. The clerk returned carrying a broad, iron-bound ledger. Hadric broke the registry seal himself. For 3 years, Northgate received grain, salt, lamp oil, winter wool, and burial stipends. The 4th year held half measures. The 5th showed nothing. Hadric turned back. Who suspended the rations? Vesna said. The children ceased to qualify when review terms expired. The oath says support continues until restoration or independent standing. The oath was issued by Prince Oren under battlefield authority. It was never ratified after his death. Ottilie pointed to the protection crest still burning faintly above the broken seal. The drum recognized House Roven's obligation, not Oren's private promise. Vesna's tone sharpened. Ancient instruments do not interpret succession law. No, they count what succession law still owes. Hadric read farther. Next to every stopped ration line appeared the same registry notation. Maternal identity unresolved. Paternal campaign claim unverified. Ottilie reached for the ledger. Hadric gave it to her. She turned several pages until she found the names she knew. Mara's mother had become unverified camp woman. Behind Ottilie, Mara made one small sound and swallowed it, as if even grief might be used against her. Ottilie did not turn. If she saw Mara's face, grief might stop her before proof was complete. The twins' mother had become Southern attendant, surname absent. A boy who still remembered his mother's burial song had been listed as issue of unknown marching camp. The women had been reduced in ink until their children cost the pack nothing. You moved their mothers out of the death rolls, Ottilie said. Vesna replied. Camp testimony was notoriously unreliable. Mara's mother was not unverified when she washed blood from soldiers' shirts. That service did not establish lawful union. Preserving names without preserving claims is how law keeps a mother's body useful and her child disposable. Vesna's eyes cooled. Maternal names do not create paternal inheritance. You accepted the mothers when war needed hands. You rejected them when their children needed bread. Recognizing informal unions would destabilize ranked inheritance. Recognizing the children would not stain inheritance law. It would bankrupt the lie that kept it clean. A murmur moved through the soldiers. Hadric looked at the barred wagons. He had reviewed rolls because rolls did not look back with hungry eyes. Now the ledger showed what the room had known first. The closure was not an investigation. It was the last step in removing the debt. He turned to the guard captain. The wagons remain empty. Vesna said. Majesty. Delaying transfer exposes the crown to unlawful dependence. Hadric did not look at her. No child leaves Northgate until the oath is reviewed in full. It was not an apology. Only the first order preventing his earlier one from doing more harm. Ottilie did not thank him. Read the final clause. Hadric unfolded the hidden blood oath. A second sheet had adhered beneath it, sealed by old blood and winter wax. The clerk separated them carefully. Oren's handwriting continued across the page. All maternal names delivered under this protection shall remain intact in the Warsire ledger. No child may be judged unverified while the mother's name is held under registry seal. Below the clause stood the name of the officer entrusted with preserving every entry. Vesna Crowell. The yard went still. Vesna did not deny the signature. She looked at Hadric and said, Preserving names did not require preserving claims. Ottilie closed the ledger. No. But first you removed the mothers. Then you used their absence to erase the children. Hadric stared at the oath his brother had written in blood. His brother had died leaving names behind. Hadric had lived long enough to sign them away. Vesna had emptied the roll. Hadric had brought the seal to close the door. And he had nearly finished the erasure for her. The drum had finished counting. Now the dead brother's blood had to speak against the living king's seal. Vesna Crowell stood beside the opened winter ledger, as though her name beneath Oren's oath were merely another administrative mark. Preserving maternal names did not preserve inheritance claims, she said. A camp record cannot establish lawful union, rank, or paternal duty. Ottilie kept the ledger closed beneath her palm, then opened the mother name archive. Vesna looked at Hadric. Those records contain private war testimony. Releasing them would violate surviving families. Which families? Ottilie asked. The mothers you reduced to camp women? Or the houses that profited when their children disappeared? Hadric held out his hand. The key. Vesna did not move at first. At last, she removed a narrow iron key from her waist and placed it in his palm. The mother name archive occupied a sealed chamber beneath the Northgate Registry Hall. Hadric ordered the records brought to the Foundling House rather than taking Ottilie away from the children. 2 clerks returned with 3 black boxes bound in wolf-hide straps. Each box carried Oren's blood mark. Vesna said, The seals were meant to prevent alteration. Then they should have protected the names, Ottilie replied. Hadric broke the first clasp. Inside lay witness sheets from the Eastern Campaign. Full names, villages, occupations, burial marks, marriage tokens, and signatures from soldiers who had acknowledged women and children before battle. Mara's mother was there, Elspeth Vale of Thornmere, laundry captain to the 3rd Winter Company, burial mark witnessed by 6 soldiers. A silver marriage thread tied to a ranked Alpha officer whose name had been covered by a later registry strip. Behind Ottilie, Mara whispered her mother's name once, as if testing whether the world would take it back. Ottilie did not turn. If she saw Mara's face, the yard would see what the registry had done before she could finish proving it. She read the entry aloud. Elspeth Vale. The name returned to sound before it returned to law. Vesna said, "A marriage thread without pack ratification cannot establish inheritance." Ottilie lifted the sheet. "It established enough trust for Elspeth to wash plague blood from your soldiers' clothes. That service is not disputed. Only the cost of remembering who performed it." Hadric removed the strip covering the father's entry. Lord Garin Holt, commander of the 3rd Winter Company. A noble house still seated in the Alpha Council. Several soldiers stopped looking at the ground. Hadric opened the next record. Then another. The pattern repeated. Named mothers became unverified campwomen after Oren's death. Acknowledged fathers became campaign issue unresolved. Village witnesses vanished from the review index, though their signatures remained beneath Oren's seal. The children had not lacked proof. The proof had been separated from the claims until neither could speak to the other. "Who authorized the downgrades?" Hadric asked. The post-war Registry Council revised evidentiary standards after widespread false claims. Names were changed under your custody. Classifications were corrected. You converted named women into anonymous labor. I removed unsupported status language. Ottilie looked at her. Oren had not asked you to protect inheritance from the children. He ordered you to protect the children from inheritance law. Prince Oren was a battlefield commander, not a registrar. He knew the law would become most dangerous after the fighting ended. Hadric opened the Warsire ledger. Common soldiers appeared with full names, death marks, and modest allotments. Ranked alphas appeared only beneath coded seals. Hadric recognized them. Council houses, border lords, men whose estates had absorbed widow plots after the war. Ottilie pointed to the codes. These are not unverified fathers. They are disputed acknowledgements. Disputed by whom? The houses named. After the men died? After surviving kin challenged irregular unions. So the houses denied the children and kept the land. That is a crude description of succession review. It is an accurate description of abandonment. Hadric turned page after page. Restored claims would reopen land transfers, ration debts, guardianship failures, and 12 years of noble inheritance. The closure had not been ordered because Northgate was unlawful. It had been ordered because the names were about to become expensive again. Who requested the closure? Hadric asked. The Registry Council. Names. Publishing preliminary sponsors before inquiry would prejudice the council, Ottilie said. The children are not the scandal. The men who left them hungry are. Vesna faced her. You speak as though every battlefield promise should overturn succession. I speak as though a mother's name should not become unreliable after her work is finished. Hadric did not look at Ottilie. Looking at her would require remembering that grief had once made him human, before he learned to decide from rooms where no child could interrupt him. He opened the 3rd black box. It held Oren's final registry instructions, written 2 days before his death. The first page ordered Vesna to preserve all maternal testimony. The second forbade separating children before name review. The third named the remedy if the registry failed. Vesna stepped forward. That page was never ratified. Hadric moved it beyond her reach. His brother's handwriting weakened near the bottom but remained clear. If the appointed registry officer suppresses, divides, or degrades the names entrusted to her, Northgate guardianship shall pass beyond Crown Registry until every child receives review. Hadric read the next line silently. Ottilie watched his face. Read it aloud. His left hand closed around the page. Then he obeyed. Guardianship shall pass to Ottilie Marr, whose household memory is recognized as protective record until public law restores what war erased. Vesna's answer came at once. A dead prince could not create permanent guardianship without crown ratification. At most, that clause suspends transfer until the council hears the claims. Ottilie held out her hand. Then it is enough to keep the wagons empty. Hadric gave her the page. His brother had made Ottilie the record. Hadric had arrived to close the house around her. Oren had trusted Ottilie's memory more than the registry. Hadric had trusted the registry more than Ottilie. The oath did not make Ottilie queen, matron, or heir. It did something more dangerous. It made her record legally harder to erase than the crown's. Oren's blood had given Ottilie a shield, not a throne. Vesna understood the difference before Hadric did. A protective record cannot determine inheritance, Vesna said. It can delay transfer, nothing more. Ottilie held Oren's page beneath the winter light. Then the transfer is delayed. Until the Alpha Council reviews the order. The same council whose houses appear beneath coded seals in the Warsire ledger. Vesna's gaze remained steady. Interested houses retain the right to defend lawful succession. Interested is a careful word for men who kept the land. Hadric stood between the barred wagons and the opened archive boxes. The closure wax still marked his glove. What must be done to keep Northgate under Ottilie's protection until review? Vesna answered before the clerk. You must ratify Oren's emergency standing under present crown authority. It would not restore a name, establish a sire, or award inheritance. It would keep the children here, Ottilie said. Yes. It would also let household memory stand as provisional evidence against the registry. Hadric looked toward the doorway. He had once promised Ottilie a home. Now the only home she had built stood beneath the seal he had brought to destroy it. Prepare the ratification, Vesna's voice sharpened. The Alpha Council must witness any act suspending registry authority. Then summon it. Ottilie did not thank him. Temporary protection was only enough time to demand justice. The clerk wrote while Hadric dictated. Northgate Foundling House shall remain under the protective guardianship of Ottilie Marr. No child may be removed, separated, renamed, or transferred until maternal records are restored and every claim receives public review. Vesna interrupted. Restoration has not been approved. Hadric looked at Ottilie. What wording is required? No hearing begins while a mother's name remains degraded, hidden, or replaced by registry language. Hadric repeated it. Vesna said, You are allowing disputed household testimony to control council procedure. No, Ottilie replied. I am refusing to let the council judge children through names the council mutilated. Hadric pressed his signet beneath the ratification. This time his seal did not close a door. It prevented one from being emptied. The council will challenge this before sunset, Vesna said. Let them come here. The first council riders arrived before noon. They did not come to see the children. They came for the Warsire ledger. 3 House representatives stood beneath fur-lined banners while their clerks demanded the coded pages be returned to sealed custody. Vesna positioned herself beside them as interpreter of every law protecting them. The ledger contains preliminary acknowledgments, she said. No code may be matched to a house without corroborating testimony. Ottilie opened Oren's key sheet. A silver thorn marked household. A split antler marked a Western Council line. A black river marked the estate that had absorbed 2 widow farms after their owners died in camp. The closure petition carried the same 3 symbols. Hadric read them in silence. The houses threatened by restored claims had sponsored the order to remove the children before review. The closure was not ordered because Northgate was unlawful, Ottilie said. It was ordered because the names were about to become expensive again. A representative stepped forward. Those houses petitioned because Marr held dependents beyond lawful term and contaminated their recollections through domestic songs. Lullabies did not create land deeds, Ottilie said. They kept children from forgetting the names your clerks removed. Memory shaped under one guardian is unreliable. You do not fear false claims. You fear true ones gathered in one room. Vesna raised one hand. Even if maternal names are restored, paternal inheritance remains disputed. Public release would reopen 12 years of transfers, marriages, estate divisions, and border obligations. The children are not asking for crowns. They are asking why bread ended when their mothers' names were sealed. Bread is not the only consequence. No. Land is. The representative faced Hadric. If you proceed, houses financing the northern defenses may withdraw support. Hadric's left hand closed. Ottilie remembered that hand around hers before the war, when pain had still been something he admitted instead of legislated around. She did not reach for him. You knew this when you signed the closure, Hadric asked Vesna. I knew unverified claims could destabilize the council. The petition called them concealed blood inheritance. It did not say the petitioning houses held the disputed land. Conflict of interest does not invalidate a lawful concern. No, Ottilie said. It explains why the concern arrived with barred wagons. Inside the doorway, Mara whispered her mother's name, Elspeth Vale. This time, the world did not take it back. Hadric turned to the clerk. Enter every maternal name exactly as recorded under Oren's seal. No hearing begins until restoration is complete. Vesna's composure hardened. You cannot restore names without determining whether the witnesses were valid. Oren recorded the witnesses. Oren is dead. So are many women you made legally unreliable. The council riders objected. Hadric raised his hand. No land is awarded today. No paternal claim is accepted. But the mothers' names return before the houses argue over what their children are owed. It was not victory. The council still controlled courts, estates, and armed loyalties. Vesna still possessed every procedural weapon built during 12 years of silence. But the children would face those weapons with names. A clerk reached the final sheet in Oren's instructions. There is a witness notation. Vesna turned too quickly. The clerk read aloud. If the mother name archive is challenged after my death, send for the surviving quartermaster of the 3rd Winter Company. He saw the registry strips placed over acknowledged sires and witnessed who ordered the maternal downgrades. Name? Hadric asked. It has been cut away, Vesna said. Then the notation is useless. Ottilie took the page. A lullaby mark had been pressed into the lower corner. 3 short strokes and 1 long. She knew the cadence. One of the children inside Northgate had arrived singing it. The witness was not lost. Ottilie had been feeding his granddaughter for 9 years. The witness was not hidden in a battlefield grave. He was hidden behind a child the registry had taught the court not to hear. Ottilie turned toward the doorway. Mara. The girl stepped forward slowly. Her face had gone pale, but she held her mother's restored name against her chest, as though it were something warm. Sing the first line your grandfather taught you. Vesna Krull raised one hand. A child's household song cannot identify a legal witness. I am not asking the song to testify, Ottilie said. I am asking it to lead us to the man whose name was cut from Oren's page. Mara looked at Ottilie, not the court. Ottilie nodded once. The girl sang 4 notes. 3 short. 1 long. The cadence carried no magic. It was an old quartermaster's call, used when supply wagons became separated in snow. Ottilie had heard Mara repeat it in fever during her first winter at Northgate. Hadric looked at the surviving soldiers near the gate. One of them lowered his head. 3rd Winter Company, he said. Quartermaster's return signal. Ottilie held up the torn page. Who held that office? The soldier answered reluctantly. Toman Vale. Mara whispered. My grandfather. Vesna's expression remained controlled. Toman Vale was removed from active testimony 9 years ago. Age, grief, and winter sickness made his recollection unstable. Removed by whom? Hadric asked. The Registry Review Board. Under whose custody? Mine. There was no confession in the word. Only the clean certainty of authority used long enough to resemble fact. Ottilie looked at Mara. When did you last see him? Before they brought me here. How old were you? 5. 9 years. Ottilie remembered the child arriving with 1 boot, a torn cloak, and a wooden ration bead tied into her braid. She had sung the quartermaster's call every night for a month. Where was he sent? Ottilie asked. Vesna answered. Grafen Veterans Lodge. Why was Mara separated from him? He could not provide lawful guardianship. He had a name, a service rank, and kinship. He had no property sufficient to support a dependent. So the pack took his granddaughter because he was poor, then erased the claim that might have returned her mother's land. A council representative stepped forward. This inquiry is becoming inflammatory. No, Ottilie said. It is becoming connected. Hadric looked at Vesna. Send riders to Grafen. The council must first determine whether Toman Vale remains competent. The council sponsored the closure he may testify against. Conflict does not remove its jurisdiction. It removes its custody. Hadric turned to the guard captain. 4 crown riders, no registry officer. Bring Toman Vale here under royal protection. Vesna's voice hardened. Majesty, an infirm veteran cannot be dragged through winter for a political spectacle. Ottilie faced Hadric. Do not bring him for spectacle. Bring him because his testimony was buried while his granddaughter was classified as unclaimed. Hadric changed the order. Send a healer in a closed carriage. He is to travel only if he chooses. If he refuses, the hearing goes to him. That did not absolve him. It kept another powerless person from being treated as evidence before being treated as human. The riders left. Vesna called the Alpha Council to witness the order. By mid-afternoon, 7 House representatives crowded Ottilie's yard. They argued that Tommen's age invalidated memory, that Oren's battlefield instructions exceeded authority, and that maternal restoration could not reopen settled estates. Ottilie listened until the same argument had been dressed in enough legal language to sound respectable. Then she said, "You keep speaking of settled estates. These children have never had a settled winter." Lord Garin Holt's representative turned toward her. If Mara's claim is entertained, House Holt faces a dispute over land transferred after the commander's death. Mara did not create that dispute. Her mother's alleged marriage thread did. Elspeth did not become alleged until the land became valuable. Vesna said, "Household memory is vulnerable to repetition. For 9 years, Mara has lived under a guardian who taught children songs containing names, villages, and family claims. Lullabies preserved what your office refused to copy. They may also have shaped recollection." Ottilie stepped closer. "You separated children from witnesses, withheld hearings, stripped mothers from the rolls, and now call memory contaminated because it survived outside your control." Hadric's left hand closed. Ottilie saw it. She also saw that he did not interrupt her. Near sunset, the Crown Riders returned. The closed carriage moved slowly through the snow. Mara did not run toward it. She stood beside Ottilie, trembling so lightly only the woman who had held her through childhood fevers would notice. An old man descended with help from the healer. Tommen Vale was thin, white-haired, and bent through one shoulder, but his eyes were clear. Around his wrist, he wore the wooden quartermaster's count beads of the 3rd Winter Company. He saw Mara. The old soldier made the return signal against his own chest. 3 taps. 1 long, Mara answered. Only then did Tommen look at the court. Vesna stepped forward. "Quartermaster Vale, you are not required to speak while under infirmity protection." "I never asked for your protection." The yard stilled. Hadric approached him. "Did you witness maternal names being degraded after Prince Oren's death?" Tommen looked at Oren's blood oath in Ottilie's hands. "After his death?" His voice was rough but steady. "No." Vesna's face did not move. Tommen lifted his wrist, showing a faded scar beneath the count beads. "Oren was alive when he ordered every mother's name restored. I carried that order to the registry myself." Hadric looked at Vesna. She answered before accusation could form. "Delivery does not establish lawful acceptance." Tommen gave a tired, bitter smile. "It was accepted." He reached beneath his coat and removed a folded strip of wolf hide, protected by oil and years of careful hiding. 3 seals remained upon it. Oren's, Vesna's, and the seal of the young king who had inherited the crown before learning what his first signature allowed. Hadric recognized his own mark. Tommen placed the order in the snow between them. "Prince Oren left the names alive," he said. "Pack Matron Crowell buried them." Then he looked at Hadric. "But you made the burial law." Hadric's seal did not prove he had ordered the mothers erased. It proved he had made the office that erased them answerable to no one. Tommen Vale's wolf-hide order lay in the snow between the king and the woman whose house he had nearly emptied. The document carried 3 seals, but only one remained bright beneath the winter light. Hadric's. He bent and lifted it. Vesna Crowell spoke before he finished reading. The order established post-war registry consolidation. It did not authorize maternal downgrades, land seizure, or the suspension of lawful review. Ottilie stood beside Tommen and Mara. "Then read what it required before consolidation." Hadric unfolded the lower section. The first clause ordered every war-dependent name preserved under Oren's protection oath. The second required maternal records to be restored before unclaimed estates could be transferred. The third placed the pack registry under Vesna's temporary authority while the crown stabilized after Oren's death. At the bottom, Hadric's younger signature ratified the entire procedure. Tommen pointed with one bent finger. "I delivered Oren's order before the funeral fires cooled." Hadric looked at him. Were the names restored? No, Vesna said. The restoration could not be completed because many claims lacked lawful paternal confirmation. The order did not require paternal confirmation before restoring the mothers, Ottilie replied. It required preservation of usable identity. Elspeth Vale had a village, rank, burial mark, marriage thread, and 6 witnesses. One strong file does not establish the others. Ottilie turned toward the black archive boxes. Then why were all of them altered by the same hand? Vesna's eyes cooled. Uniform classification prevents favoritism. Uniform erasure prevents appeal. Hadric continued reading. A 4th clause authorized the transfer of estates, classified as abandoned after review. He stopped. What review? Vesna answered. The post-war registry review. The hearings that never occurred? Administrative review does not always require personal appearance. Ottilie looked at her. You declared children unverified because no witness appeared, then called the review complete without summoning the witnesses. The kingdom had tens of thousands of displaced claims. So you made absence prove itself. A council representative stepped forward. Majesty, the administrative failures of the war years cannot invalidate every estate transfer made since. Ottilie faced him. No one said every transfer. She placed her hand on the war sire ledger. Only those built upon mothers your houses helped turn into unnamed women. Vesna said. This inquiry has exceeded the closure matter. No, Ottilie replied. The closure was how you intended to end the inquiry. Hadric looked toward the barred wagons. Tommen followed his gaze. They were going to scatter the household, the old quartermaster said. Different wards. Different roles. No room left where all the songs matched all the names. Vesna's voice remained controlled. Consolidated wards reduce memory contamination. Separated children reduce corroboration, Ottilie said. Hadric turned the wolf-hide order over. A narrow accounting strip had been stitched to the back. Columns of figures ran beneath the registry seal. Widow plots, campaign stipends, orphan grain allotments, and land rents collected after claims were marked unresolved. The amounts continued for 12 years. Where did these funds go? He asked. Vesna said. Poster. To whom? The Northgate Recovery Trust. Who governs it? The registry. 3 appointed council houses, and the Crown Treasury. Hadric's face hardened. The same 3 house symbols that appeared on the closure petition appeared beside the trust accounts. House Holt, the Western Antler Line, the Black River Estate. Ottilie read the figures. You stopped feeding Northgate after year 3. The shelter no longer qualified. But the orphan allotments continued to enter the trust. They were reassigned to regional recovery. You collected money for children your role said did not exist. Vesna's answer came without hesitation. The funds were calculated from wartime population estimates, not individual entitlement. Tommen laughed once without humor. When the crown needed grain, they existed as estimates. When they needed bread, they became unverified. Mara stood beside him, holding Elspeth Vale's restored record. Hadric looked at the child, then at the account bearing the Crown Treasury seal. How much entered the Royal Treasury? The clerk examined the totals. 1/5 funded northern fortification bonds. The council representative said, Those walls protected the entire pack. Ottilie's voice stayed quiet. Built with the winter shares of children kept outside them. Hadric's left hand closed around the order. 12 years earlier, he had inherited a damaged kingdom, an empty treasury, and a council warning that border defenses would fail before spring. He had signed Vesna's consolidation measure because the columns balanced. He had never asked who had been removed to make them balance. Oren's restoration clause came before the transfer authority, he said. Vesna inclined her head. Yes. And you certified restoration complete. I certified that all legally supportable names had been preserved. You decided which names were legally supportable. As pack matron, that was my duty. Under authority I gave you. Yes. The word did not absolve him. It placed both of them inside the same chain. Ottilie looked at Hadric. Do not ask whether Vesna exceeded your order before asking why your order allowed one office to erase a mother, deny her child, transfer the land, and certify its own work. He met her eyes. Once, before the war, she had known how to loosen his closed hand without making him feel weak. Now she left it closed. What action prevents further transfer? He asked. Freeze the trust. Seal every registry office involved. Remove claim review from the houses receiving the land. Vesna said, freezing the trust will suspend northern wall payments and winter grain contracts. Ottilie did not turn from Hadric. Then let the council explain publicly why its walls depend on children remaining nameless. Hadric faced the royal clerk. Freeze the Northgate Recovery Trust. No land, ration, stipend, or estate transfer continues until independent review. The council representatives erupted. He raised his voice above them. Pack Matron Vesna Crowell is suspended from custody of the Mother Name Archive, Warsire Ledger, and all Northgate claims. The records remain here under Crown Guard and Ottilie Marr's protective standing. Vesna did not protest her suspension. She watched the accounting strip. Ottilie noticed. Turn the page, she said. Hadric did. The final trust schedule listed future transfers awaiting closure of Northgate Foundling House. 26 pending estate releases. Each matched a child inside Ottilie's home. At the bottom stood one additional entry. Not land. Not grain. Guardianship compensation payable upon dispersal of the household. The beneficiary was not the crown. It was Vesna Crowell's private widow estate. The barred wagons had never been transportation. They were the final condition of payment. The payment schedule did not make Vesna look guilty. It made her look lawful. She stood beside the trust record while the council representatives gathered around her. Guardianship compensation is paid to any estate prepared to receive dependents after lawful dispersal, she said. My widow property contains winter beds and food stores. The entry proves preparation, not profit. Ottilie looked toward the barred wagons. You prepared to be paid before the children were told where they were going. The registry prepares for every possible placement, only after closing the one they already had. Vesna turned to Hadric. The trust is frozen. My custody is suspended. There is no legal purpose in leaving private accounts exposed in a household yard. A council lord stepped forward. The records must return to the royal hall. Ottilie understood. Once the boxes left Northgate, the hearing would move behind council doors. Mothers would become disputed entries again. Children would be questioned separately, without the others present to confirm villages, burial songs, and campaign routes. Nothing leaves, she said. The Lord looked at Hadric. Protective standing does not grant Marr control over Crown archives. No, Ottilie replied. But Oren's order forbids dividing the record before review. Vesna's expression remained composed. Review must follow procedure. The procedure separated every proof from the person it protected. Hadric looked from the archive boxes to the house. What keeps them together? A public hearing, Ottilie said. The council representatives objected. War testimony could expose private unions. Noble estates could be prejudiced before evidence was tested. Ottilie waited. You are not protecting children from public shame. You are protecting houses from public memory. Vesna said. You would parade grieving children through the square to strengthen your position. I would let them stand together while the court argues whether they exist. You were ordered to keep them inside. Ottilie looked at the closure ribbon across her door. By the order now suspended? She took the torn ribbon in both hands and pulled. The wax split. Hadric had sealed the house. Now he watched Ottilie break what remained of his command without asking permission. Vesna's voice sharpened. Destroying a crown seal is an offense. Enter it beside the offense of sending prisoner wagons for children protected by blood oath. Ottilie turned toward the house. Mara, bring the name cloths. Tomas, take the burial mark box. No one carries a younger child unless that child asks. The children put on coats. Older hands checked smaller gloves. Mara brought the folded cloths on which Ottilie had stitched every remembered mother's name. Hadric moved toward the steps as Ottilie descended. Ice covered the stone. His hand lifted toward her elbow. She stopped. Once, before the war, she had known that hand as shelter. She would not let remembered tenderness disguise present guilt. I can walk. His hand lowered. I know. Then do not use what we were to make this easier. I will not. He turned to the guard captain. Clear the road to the public square. The children remain under Ottilie Marr's protection. No council officer separates or questions one without her presence. Vesna said, You are turning a registry dispute into a public trial. Hadric looked at the wagons. It became public when I brought iron nails. The Northgate Square filled before they arrived. Soldiers' widows stood beside market women. Veterans gathered near the winter fountain. Council banners hung above the registry steps. The Howl Census Drum was carried last. Ottilie had not requested it. Vesna had. If household memory is to challenge the roles, the pack matron said, the drum must be recalibrated beyond domestic influence. Registry priests stretched a silence cloth over its hide and burned bitter wolf leaf around the rim. Ottilie watched without fear. Lullabies did not make them ode. Lullabies kept the ode from being forgotten. Vesna faced the crowd. A drum response establishes prior obligation, not present inheritance. Then let it establish what your office denied existed. Hadric stood on the registry steps without taking the high seat brought for him. Ottilie noticed. She did not mistake it for repair. She opened the first name cloth. Elspeth Vale of Thornmere, she sang. Not beautifully. Correctly. She used the 4-note pattern Mara had remembered through fever and 9 years of being called unclaimed. The silence cloth remained still. Then Tomenvale answered with the quartermaster's return call. Mara spoke her mother's name. 6 veterans repeated the burial mark. The drum struck once beneath the cloth. Silver crossed the square. It did not circle Mara. It reached the House Holt banner and burned through the strip, hiding Lord Garin Holt's acknowledgement. Vesna raised her voice. One corroborated claim does not validate the household record. Ottilie unfolded the second cloth. Then the third. Each name was sung. Each surviving witness was allowed to answer. The drum did not respond to affection alone. It waited for obligation. Ration promised, parent acknowledged, shelter sworn, or land held under disputed seal. By the 9th name, 3 council banners carried silver marks. By the 15th, the winter fountain reflected villages removed from the rolls. Ottilie reached the final cloth. It bore the names of older wards who had left Northgate during the first 3 years. When Vesna controlled the wagons without challenge, Ottilie had kept their songs too. Vesna stepped forward. Those dependents are outside this proceeding. Why? They were lawfully dispersed. To which houses? The placement records are sealed. Ottilie sang the first lost name. The drum did not beat. It groaned. Silver lines spread toward the 3 closure sponsors, then continued north and west along roads leading away from Northgate. Not 26 lines. 43. The current children were only those Ottilie had managed to keep together. 17 others had been dispersed into records. No one in the square had been allowed to open. Hadric looked at Vesna. Where are they? Vesna's answer remained calm. Placed according to law. Ottilie held the cloth higher. Then the law can bring them back to be counted. The 43 silver roads did not lead to homes. They led to contracts. The Howl Census Drum fell silent again, leaving thin lines of light stretched across the snow toward 17 destinations beyond Northgate. Some ended at council estates. Others disappeared toward quarry settlements, border farms, and winter mills. Vesna Crowell looked at the lines without surprise. Prior placement does not imply abuse. Ottilie lowered the cloth bearing the dispersed names, then opened the placement records. They contain private guardianship agreements. They contain children taken from this house. Children lawfully transferred from an overcrowded shelter. Hadric stood on the registry steps. The Alpha Council gathered behind him. Bring the records. One council lord objected. Majesty, sealed placements cannot be exposed before the full houses. Employers, foster kin, and marriage contracts may be affected. Ottilie faced him. You called them guardianships until someone asked where the children went. Now you call them employers. The lord's mouth tightened. Vesna said. Older wards were placed where they could contribute to their upkeep. Pack law permits household service under supervised guardianship. Service under their own names? No one answered. Hadric turned to the registry clerks. Open the placement chamber. Vesna moved 1 step toward him. The records are protected by ward privacy. Privacy did not prevent their names from being sent across the kingdom. It prevented public stigma. It prevented return. The sealed books were carried into the square beneath armed guard. 17 narrow volumes. 1 for each child removed from Northgate during the first 3 years. Ottilie did not touch them until every book had been placed where the public could see. The first belonged to his placement record gave him neither. Ward 7. Transferred to the Western Antler Estate. Labor expectation. Stable work. Inheritance review? Suspended during dependency. Name petition. Permitted upon completion of guardianship debt. Ottilie read the final line twice. What debt? Vesna answered. Food, housing, clothing, and training provided by the receiving household. The pack already owed him food and housing under Oren's oath. That obligation ended upon placement. So the council stopped paying Northgate, sent the child to an estate, and made him repay the estate for feeding him. Guardianship requires reciprocal duty. Children are not creditors to the houses that took them. Hadric opened the second volume. The same language appeared. Ward 11. Domestic service. Wages retained against guardianship cost. Maternal claim deferred. The third had been sent to a quarry settlement at 12 years old. The fourth to a winter tannery. The fifth disappeared from the book after a note reading transferred beyond local review. Ottilie's hand remained steady only because rage had gone colder than grief. You did not place them into families. Vesna said, not every dependent can be adopted. You placed them where their labor could pay the cost of erasing them. A woman among the market crowd spoke. My sister took in a war child. No debt was charged. Vesna looked toward her. Private charity differs from state-supervised guardianship. Ottilie turned another page. Private charity allowed the child to keep a name. The council representatives began speaking over one another. Some argued that labor placements were standard after war. Others insisted individual abuses could not invalidate the entire system. Hadric raised his hand. The square quieted. Who approved these contracts? Vesna replied. The registry. Receiving estate and crown placement office. Whose seal authorized the placement office? She looked at him. Yours. Hadric opened the back of the first volume. His seal appeared beneath a general authorization renewed each winter. He had not selected the estate. He had not written Ward 7. He had given the office power to do both. Ottilie watched him read. Do not tell me you did not know each name. I will not. Then ask why your law required none. Hadric looked at the clerk. Were original names provided to receiving houses? The clerk swallowed. Names were withheld when claims remained disputed. Why? To prevent households from strengthening unverified inheritance petitions. Ottilie understood the design. A child sent away without a mother's name could not locate witnesses. A child renamed by an estate could not return under the name Oren had protected. A child charged for bread could never finish paying enough to claim land. You did not merely disperse them, she said. You broke the path home. Vesna's expression remained composed. Household attachment can produce false return claims. Separation protected final placement. Final for whom? The child. The estate. Hadric turned toward the council houses marked by the silver roads. No representative leaves the square. A lord stepped forward. You cannot detain the council over administrative contracts. I can prevent records from disappearing during a crown inquiry. Vesna said. You are allowing Ottilie Marr's grief to redefine 12 years of lawful guardianship. Ottilie looked at her. My grief built beds after your law built debts. She opened the remaining books. Each contained the same pattern in different words. Names removed. Claims deferred. Labor required. Return discouraged. At the bottom of the 17th volume, Ottilie found a date marked in red wax. The coming winter solstice. She checked the others. The same date appeared in every book. Hadric leaned closer. What happens then? Vesna answered too slowly. The first placement cohort reaches final petition age. Ottilie read the clause. A dispersed ward could petition for restoration only by presenting a matching household record, maternal name, and corroborating memory from the original shelter. All three had to be presented together. The mother name archive had been sealed. The children had been renamed. Northgate Foundling House was the only place where the songs, villages, burial marks, and original names still remained together. Hadric looked toward the closure order lying torn in the snow. The house was ordered closed before the petitions opened. Vesna said. The timing followed an annual registry review. Ottilie held up the 17 placement books. No. The timing followed the children becoming old enough to ask what was taken. The closure had never been meant only to remove the 26 children still inside. It had been meant to destroy the final shared record for 43. And if Northgate remained closed until the winter solstice, every dispersed ward would lose the legal right to reclaim a name forever. The solstice deadline turned every road out of Northgate into a race against erasure. Hadric sent who got us to all 17 destinations. Each carried the same order. No dispersed ward could be detained, renamed, or questioned without an independent witness. Any ward who wished to return for petition review would travel at Crown expense. Vesna Crowell read the order. You are inviting claimants to rehearse their stories together. They were separated so their stories could never meet. Ottilie said, shared testimony after contact is legally contaminated. Then your law rewards the person who kept them apart. The first riders returned 2 days later. A young man from the Western Antler Estate entered Northgate wearing a stablemaster's coat. The placement book called him Ward 7. Ottilie knew him as Petrin Lark. He stopped when he saw the Foundling House. You kept the blue shutters. You painted them. I was a leave-in. You complained the whole time. Behind him, the estate steward held a debt contract. Petrin remains under lawful service until his guardianship account is settled. Hadric took the parchment. The debt included 12 winters of food, clothing, bedding, and training. It did not credit 12 winters of labor. Ottilie looked at Petrin. Do you wish to remain with the estate? The steward objected. A dependent cannot dissolve placement by preference. Petrin answered first. No. The word was quiet. It still changed the square. Hadric broke the debt seal. Then you do not return. Vesna said, dissolving one contract before formal review creates precedent. Yes, Hadric replied. That is what law becomes when it stops protecting the wrong thing. More wagons arrived. A quarry worker with a scar across one palm. 2 sisters separated into different households and told the other had died. A young woman renamed 3 times as estates changed hands. Some came willingly. 2 refused to return, fearing retaliation from the houses that fed them. Ottilie did not compel them. Choice cannot begin only after I agree with it. By the 6th day, 14 of the 17 stood in Northgate. The remaining 3 sent written refusals witnessed outside registry custody. Ottilie restored their original names to the hearing record without filing claims they had not chosen to make. Vesna watched her. You preserve names even when they reject your guardianship. They were never required to belong to me in order to belong to themselves. At sunset, the Alpha Council convened beneath the registry banners. The disputed houses demanded separate hearings. Vesna presented the contamination statute. Any claimant exposed to another claimant's testimony before review could not rely on memory as independent proof. Every returned ward had spoken to Ottilie. Many had spoken to one another. The council declared their recollections compromised. Hadric's face hardened. You brought them here, Vesna said. Your own order destroyed the independence of their testimony. Ottilie understood the trap. If they remained apart, they could not corroborate one another. If they gathered, their agreement became contamination. The system did not test truth. It made truth procedurally impossible. Then we will not begin with memory. Ottilie laid the mother name cloths face down in the square. Beside them she placed the burial mark box, Oren's oath, the placement contracts, and the original witness sheets. These existed before the children returned. Documents require authenticated connection to each claimant, Vesna replied. Ottilie looked toward Petrin. Do not tell us your name. Show us what the estate could not teach you. Petrin removed his coat and turned his left shoulder toward the crowd. Beneath the collar lay a burn mark shaped like a hooked branch. Ottilie selected a clay token bearing the same sign. Lark Family Hearthmark, Tomanvale said. Eastern Supply Village. Petrin had not spoken to him. The quarry worker carried a woven wrist pattern matching a mother's camp record. One sister remembered half a burial route. The other, raised 60 miles away, remembered the remaining turns. The renamed young woman possessed a lullaby cadence Ottilie had never sung publicly because its final note belonged only to her mother's village. Evidence met body. Body met record. Not because Ottilie had taught them what to say, but because Vesna's placements had failed to remove everything. Council representatives demanded private examination. Ottilie refused. You separated them in private. Their restoration will be witnessed. Vesna turned to Hadric. If you permit collective review, every noble house may claim the crown abandoned succession law under emotional pressure. Hadric looked at the returned wards. My crown did abandon them. The words moved through the square. I signed the authority that allowed names to be removed, debts created, and hearings made impossible. The council benefited. The registry certified itself. Northgate carried the lives we discarded. Vesna's expression sharpened. A confession does not create lawful remedy. No, this does. Hadric handed the clerk a new order. All contaminated memory exclusions applied to war orphan claims were suspended. Placement debts were voided. No estate could retain a ward against stated choice. The solstice petitions would be heard through combined documentary, bodily, village, and household evidence. The council erupted. A border lord threatened to withdraw men from the northern wall. Hadric removed the Alpha Council clasp from his mantle. Any house that abandons the border because a child receives a name will explain that choice to every family whose son guards it. Ottilie watched him. He had chosen the children publicly. That did not return the years. It made the next betrayal more costly. Vesna stepped toward the registry table. You still lack authority to restore packs standing before solstice. The original census entry must be sounded by the Howl drum, and the instrument cannot accept claims without the registry seal. Hadric ordered her to surrender it. She opened her hand. The iron seal lay broken across her palm. I removed no name today, she said. But without an intact seal, no restoration can be lawfully sounded before solstice. The final bell began tolling across Northgate. One night remained. 43 names had survived war, hunger, dispersal, and 12 years of law. Now they could still be erased by the absence of a piece of iron Vesna had been legally permitted to destroy. Vesna had broken the iron seal, but she had mistaken the registry's tool for the law itself. Ottilie Marr looked at the two pieces in the pack matron's palm. You destroyed crown property during an active restoration hearing. I destroyed an obsolete seal assigned to an office from which I have been suspended. You destroyed the only device your own procedure allows us to use before solstice. Vesna's expression remained calm. Then the claims must wait until a replacement is forged. The deadline arrives at dawn. Law cannot move faster because delay is painful. No, Ottilie said. But it should not reward the person who caused the delay. The final bell faded across Northgate. Hadric descended from the registry steps. Can a replacement seal be forged tonight? The royal clerk shook his head. Not lawfully. A registry seal requires council casting, witness approval, and a full moon hardening. The Alpha Council representatives began speaking at once. The hearings must be postponed. Existing placements would remain active. The solstice deadline could not be changed without invalidating every winter census in the kingdom. Ottilie listened until their arguments became one familiar thing. Nothing could be repaired because the people who broke it had written the repair procedure. Tommen Vale tapped his quartermaster's beads against his wrist. The first census seals were not iron. Vesna turned toward him. That custom predates unified pack law. So does the Howl drum. The old soldier looked at the carved rim. In war, when a registry post was destroyed, 3 living records could stand in its place. The oath holder, the namekeeper, and the crown that owed the protection. The clerk frowned. A field census. A lawful one. Field census authority ended with the Eastern Campaign. Tommen pointed toward Oren's blood oath. Not while its obligations remain unpaid. Vesna said, You are relying on emergency custom preserved in a veteran's memory. Ottilie lifted the original quartermaster order bearing 3 seals. No. We are relying on the procedure you accepted before you degraded the names. Hadric read the lower margin. The writing was faint but clear. Where registry iron fails under active war obligation, the sworn protector, living witness, and crown debtor may sound recognition jointly. The council protested again. Ottilie faced them. You accepted Oren's battlefield authority when it transferred estates. You cannot call it obsolete only when it restores children. Hadric looked toward the 40 returned and resident wards gathered around the square. Who is the sworn protector? Ottilie, Tommen said. The living witness? I am. And the crown debtor? No one answered for him. Hadric stepped to the drum. I am. The title did not make him noble in that moment. The debt did. Vesna raised her voice. A joint field sounding can restore a name for ration purposes. It cannot establish inheritance. Ottilie nodded. Then tonight we restore legal existence, winter share, and the right to petition. Land hearings can follow under independent review. You would divide standing from blood claim. I would stop using disputed inheritance as an excuse to deny bread. Hadric turned to the clerk. Enter the procedure. Vesna said. The Alpha Council has not approved an independent review body. It approved the offices that benefited from erasure. Ottilie placed the mother name archive, war-sire ledger, placement books, and Oren's oath on one table. No house named in these records may judge its own claim. The returned wards stood beside the children who had remained at Northgate. No one was ordered into Humbali groups. No one was told whom to call mother, father, guardian, or kin. Ottilie began with Elspeth Vale. She did not sing alone. Mara spoke her mother's name. Toman gave the quartermaster's return signal. Ottilie placed her hand against the drum's black oak rim. Hadric laid his bare palm beside hers, not touching. I acknowledge the winter dead of House Roven, he said. The drum struck once. Silver formed Elspeth Vale's full name above the square. The royal clerk entered it without abbreviation. Mara's legal standing returned first. Her inheritance remained subject to hearing, but her ration share, petition right, and freedom from forced placement became immediate. The next name followed. Then another. The process was not quick. That mattered. Each restoration required proof spoken by living mouths, and entered where the registry could no longer replace a woman with a category. Petron Lark reclaimed his name, and rejected the Western Antler estate as guardian. The two separated sisters chose to remain together without entering any noble household. 3 former wards who had refused to return were restored by witnessed written choice. Their absence was not used against them. By midnight, 21 names had been sounded. By the darkest hour, 36. Vesna remained beneath guard, watching the system she had controlled rebuild itself without her. When the 43rd name entered the new roll, the Howl Census Drum struck no extra beat, no hidden heir, no chosen child, only the obligations already proved. Dawn broke over Northgate. Hadric addressed the square. The erased names are restored to pack standing. Every claimant receives the winter shares withheld under false classification. Disputed family lands will be placed in protected trust until independent hearings conclude. No receiving estate may collect labor debt from a former ward. The council resisted the trust. Hadric continued. Any house that concealed acknowledgement forfeits control of the disputed property during review. Ottilie stepped beside the record table. And every child chooses whether to return to kin, accept another guardian, remain at Northgate, or petition for independent standing when of age. Vesna spoke for the last time before the guards took her. You will fracture half the council. Ottilie looked at the restored names moving across the drum's moon-gray hide. No, we are making visible where it was already broken. Vesna would face public inquiry for destroyed records, diverted support, unlawful placements, and personal benefit. She would not be executed so the council could place every failure inside one woman and declare itself clean. Northgate Foundling House became an independent sanctuary. Its governing board included former wards, village witnesses, healers, record keepers, and one crown representative without unilateral authority. Household memory could preserve identity, but no single guardian could control a child's legal future. Every ration, land claim, placement, and refusal remained open to inspection. The barred wagons were dismantled. Their iron became shelves for the restored archive. Weeks later, Hadric came to Northgate without guards. Ottilie found him repairing the gate hinge under Mara's direction. You are holding it crooked, Ottilie said. I have been told. You were once better with your hands. I was once less afraid of appearing unskilled. She stood beside him, but did not take the tool. He looked toward the house. I cannot ask you to return to what we were. No. I cannot ask forgiveness before the land hearings are complete. No. His left hand closed. Ottilie noticed. She did not cover it with hers. What can I ask? He said. She considered the man who had once promised her a home, then brought iron nails to the one she built without him. Ask what work remains. Hadric looked at the crooked hinge, the archive shelves beyond the door, and the children choosing their own names inside. What work remains? Ottilie handed him the hammer. Most of it. He accepted the answer. Not as punishment, as the beginning of being useful where authority had failed. Inside Northgate, Mara sang Elspeth Vale's name while the younger children learned the restored roll. The Howl Census Drum stood silent in the square. It no longer needed to count the forgotten. The law had finally begun writing them down.